So in general, we obviously want to promote beneficial insects in orchards, because for every beneficial insect you have in there that's eating some kind of pest insect, that's going to reduce pest pressure, reduce damage, and if you're really doing the job right, that means that's one to many fewer spray applications, which in Washington is particularly important because we grow so many organic apples. Chemical options are really limited in organic production, so that means they very heavily rely on beneficial insects in order to produce a good organic crop. We have growers who are, I'd say for the last decade or two, have been more and more involved in using beneficial insects as a basically living pesticide, where you can actually find insectaries that commercially produce beneficial insects in large quantities. The growers approach those insectaries and say, I'd like to buy this many, have my shipment arrive at this time, and they go ahead and put them out in the orchard. So one of the questions I get from growers that are doing that practice is, how do I do this correctly? And they're thinking kind of along the same lines as directions you would get from a pesticide label. And the pesticide label is going to tell you what pests it works on, give you a sense if there's, can it be too hot? So if it's a very volatile pesticide, what rate do you mix it up at? And there's a legal range for that. And what rates are effective. People know that already from prior research when a pesticide comes out. None of that information is available for beneficial insects for releases in orchards. You're trying to ask the same questions you would of best methods for applying a pesticide, but with a living thing. So it gets so much more complicated with how they interact with the environment and with each other. So we've got really basic efficacy questions, products that work, products that don't, dialing in on release rates, but that's going to differ from product to product. There are going to be questions about timing. I know there are some growers that are very adamant that you need to do smaller release rates spaced more apart in time, as opposed to one big go, which is obviously a little bit more labor. So there are questions about how's that work? What's the spacing on that? Do you change up the natural enemy when you do it? And then every few years we do get some new natural enemies on the market. So this orchard is one of our trial sites for two of our major projects. One is getting good best practice recommendations for how to release lacewings in orchards. We're answering a few key questions. One, there are two main species of lacewings that growers can purchase. One of which we know doesn't establish in Washington. It's more of like a subtropical species, but seems to have pretty good efficacy based on grower experience and our preliminary work. So the question we get from growers is the one species better than the other? Because the subtropical species is much less expensive. So they would rather that one be more effective. So that's one of the questions we're trying to answer. One of the other questions we get is lacewings, when you order them, come in a variety of ways, like many products do. So you can get eggs or larvae, and you can buy them as basically loose, is what the company will call it, and that's when they're in a carrier material to make it easier to apply them. Usually that's like vermiculite or rice hulls, and you just sprinkle them on the trees. And then the other method that's commonly used in orchards and in greenhouse situations is cards. And the cards have an adhesive on them, and the insectary has applied the lacewing eggs to the adhesive. So you just hang the card on the tree, the eggs hatch, and the little lacewings disperse. With the cards versus the sprinkle containers, just for an egg application method, the cards are a little bit more expensive, but there's not a massive price difference. The main questions I see from folks are, well, if we do the cards, you've got all those eggs concentrated together. Baby lacewings are cannibals. They will eat each other, especially when the stalk has been removed and they're just all attached to a card. Do the first couple lacewings to hatch end up with a really good meal, and we're actually getting like 3 lacewings per card instead of 200 lacewings per card? And then the other big concern is, well, if I've got all these eggs together on one card instead of sprinkly and kind of more distributed, do we have basically a predator smorgasbord? So if an ant finds them, if something else finds them, are they just wiped out? So the questions are fairly infinite. I will never be bored, ever. So we're excited about all the different questions that we have, but it is a lot to get all of these moving parts together. And I don't think we'll ever get it perfected, I think, to the way that someone would expect more of like a spray program to be more fine-tuned.